Today's daf is Lamed Chet, and we are a good deal behind. We pick up at the very bottom, like last word of Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph. So we're going to try to keep up a good pace today, even though it's a very juicy topic. Okay, so the Gemara says like this: Tanan Hasam. Okay, now we're on Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph. We taught over there. We're going through the Mishnayot and Shvius that relate to Shemitas Ksafim, not just Pruzbal, but Shemitas Ksafim in general. So now we're getting into some of the mechanics of how Shemitas Ksafim work. Somebody comes during the Shemitah year. Now the language here is during the Shemitah year. Rashi says it means after Shemitah has passed and the debt has been annulled. But I want to get back to that anyway. So somebody comes to pay back a debt, and you're supposed to say Mishamitani. You're supposed to say to him, like the creditor is supposed to say to the debtor, I annul the debt. I release you from it. But if the debtor says, nevertheless, I still want to pay it back, look, I feel bad. You let me $1,000. You know, it's nice that you're releasing me and that there's Shemitah, but I want to make good on my debts. So you kabel him in it. You're allowed to take the money back from him. This is the matter of the Shemitah. So what is that? So the dvar is the word of dibur, right, to speak, and therefore what it's telling you is that you are supposed to release him through words. You're supposed to basically say, Mishamit, I release you. So that's interesting, right? Let's say you don't say that, right? Is the idea of Shemitah's Mishametes Ksafim, right? It says Shamot Koba Mashayado, etc., right? Is that telling you that you have an obligation to annul the debt? We always assumed that it meant that Shemitah automatically annuls the debt. Let's say you didn't say this. Is the debt still annulled or not? So it's a good question. You could say it's annulled, but you nevertheless have an obligation to personally reinforce that through your words. It's not exactly clear the relationship between your verbal Mishamit Ani and the automatic sense that the debt is annulled. The Rush has the best resolution. I didn't check it, but if I'm remembering from memory, the Rush basically says the difference is during the Shemitah and after the Shemitah. The Rush says that this is specifically Bishmitah, that during the year of the Shemitah, the debt still exists, but you are supposed to not demand it. You are supposed to be shamot. You are supposed to say mishametani. Okay, so you're an active participant in, because if you think about it, right, otherwise it's not like that there's a releasing from debts on Shemitah. Shemitah is when everything else is released. But no, that guy still owes you money, right? And it only gets annulled at the end of Shemitah. So really, it's like during Shemitah, you can collect your debts. Like that seems to deeply go against the sense we have about what Shemitah is about. So the Rosh actually says both are true. During Shemitah, the debt exists, and you're commanded not to demand it, not to exact it, and it's Zedvar HaShemitah. If somebody tries to pay it up during Shemitah, you're supposed to say, I release you from it. After Shemitah, it automatically is annulled. So the Rosh actually has...
You should do the principle before the 7th year.
Well, no, because well, maybe, but okay, but the point is that you have to prevent the automatic annulment, right? If you want to collect it afterwards, right? During it, you can go through the sabbatical, through the Shemitah without actively collecting it. Anyway, so that's a very nice way that the Rosh reads this idea of Bishmita, and that also explains why the guy, if he says Afal Pichen, I want to return it, that you're supposed to accept it, because then he still owes you the money. The debt still exists, right? It's just that you're not allowed to demand it. You have an obligation to release him. If he wants to pay it up on his own free will, right? So then fine, that makes sense. There still is a debt there. It hasn't been erased yet. Okay, so it's a very nice read of this idea. If you read it the other way, then you could say that even if the debt has been annulled or whatever, if a guy wants to make good on money he borrowed, even if sort of as a sort of legal matter, there's no debt, then it's the right thing to do to pay up. You got money from a guy, you give it back to the guy. So sort of the same way, if you got a gift from somebody, if you got an invitation from somebody for Shabbos meal, you should reciprocate. It doesn't have to mean that there's an official legal debt, but it still would be like the right thing to do.
It's a moral debt.
It's a moral debt, right? Anyway, but the Rush reads it in this other way, which is a very, I think, powerful way of reading it. Okay, so you're supposed to say Mishamitani, and he's allowed, and if he says Al Pichen, you're allowed to accept it from him. Now we're going to go to pushing that point about Afal Pichen as a way of getting your money back, and we're going to push it a little bit. Let's take a look. Amar Rabba, says Rabba, or Rabba have say it, Yatoli le ad Amar Hachi. You can basically string him up until he says this. Until he basically says, even though afal pichen, I want to return it to you. So you twist his arm, not literally, but whatever. We'll see cases about it. Anyway, you try to twist his arm to willingly give it back, even though he doesn't owe you the money. So the Gemara says,
this is allowed. This is like what you're allowed to do.
Yeah, you're allowed to. So it starts to get a little funny, right? So by challenges, when he gives back, if he's choosing to give back the money after you said Mishamitani, don't say, I'm giving this back to you because of the debt. The debt no longer exists. You've released him from the debt. Okay. I don't owe you the money, but I want to give this to you as a gift. Okay, so if we're acknowledging that it should not be given back in the context of paying a debt, if he is choosing to give it back, how can you twist his arm to give it back if we're supposed to not acknowledge that there's a real debt here? So the Gemara says, so Amarle, so Rabbi said back, fine, you pressure him until he says, I'm giving it to you as a gift. So you don't acknowledge that it's in the context of a debt, but you try to persuade him, it's really the right thing to do. He gave you all that money. Okay, technically speaking, the debt doesn't exist anymore, but come on, really, anyway, so that's what you do, and you try to get him to understand his moral responsibility, and then he gives it, but he can't be giving it as payment of a debt. The debt has already been erased, or if it's during Shemitah, the way the Rush understands, even if objectively it exists, the person is being mishamate, is not demanding it as a debt. So you pay it up, but you don't pay it up as payment of a debt.
Isn't this a little bit against the whole concept of what this is all about?
I know. So this is interesting, right? This is the Gemara trying to, Eddie, you're distracted. This is the Gemara trying to strike a similar balance to the whole phenomenon of the Pruz Bowl, right? But I would say that I'm not so sure I would push it. Certainly when Russ says Talile the Amar Hachi, he's trying to sort of yes, that is a little undermining. That is sort of acknowledging there's some injustice here, right? It's nice to release people, but if a person's able to pay back and has the means or whatever, it's appropriate to pay it back. Also, again, remember, according to the Rush, the way the Rush understands it, the debt really does exist. What the Torah is telling you is during the Shemitah year, you're not supposed to demand, you're not supposed to exact payment, but the debt still does exist. So it works a little bit better according to the way the Rush understand it. Okay, so anyway, so the Gemara says like this. Now we're going to have some cases. Abba bar Marta do Abba bar Minyomi. Abba bar Marta is also known as Abba bar Minyomi. Having masik pay Rabba Zuse. He owed Rabba money. I see Nuniale B'Shvius. He brought it to him on Shvius. Again, for the Rush, it's beautiful. It means during the Shemitah year, right? So Amalei Mishamitani. So Rabba did the right thing, and he said to him Mishamitani. So Shakle the Ozil. So fine, he took his money and he left. Good. Okay. Also Abaye. Now again, this is the same Rabba and Abaye that were before. Right? Remember, Rabba said you can pressure him, and Abaye challenged. Well, it might have been Rabba. But anyway, Abaye challenged that. Okay, but now Abaye is Rabba's Talmud. Rabba didn't get his money back, even though Abaye said you're not supposed to pressure him or challenge that idea. Let's see what Abaye does right now. So Abaye went. He saw that he saw that Rabba was in anguish. Amalei, Amayatziv Mar. Why are you so upset? Amalei, here's what happened. He owed me $10,000. He came to pay it back. I did what I was supposed to do. I said Meshamidani, and then he just left. He didn't understand the little game we're supposed to play. Not the nuance, but he didn't keep to the script. Okay, so Azul Gabe, so Abai went to him. Amalei, Zuzay Lamar, did you bring your money back to pay back the master? Amalei, yes. Amalei, and what did Rabba say to you? Amalei, Mishaminan, he told me that he was releasing me. Amalei, so Rabbi said to him, did you say to him, nevertheless, I still want to pay it back? Amalei, he said to him, well, I didn't say that. Amalei, so Rabbi said to him, had you said to him, he would have been happy to take it from you. So you know what? It would be a good idea now to bring the money back to him and to say so when he did that, Rabba took the money. I'm sorry. So he went, he brought it to him. He said to him, so Rabba was happy to take the money. So Amar, and then Rabba said about him, that Torah scholar, did not know what he was doing initially. He wasn't paying attention. He forgot his lines. Okay, he should have learned enough Torah. It was a Mishnah. that you're supposed. Now the Mishnah doesn't say you're supposed to say afal pichein. It says if you say afal pichein, if the guy says it, you can accept it. But he should have understood that that's his moral responsibility.
So that was actually the Mishnah.
That was the Mishnah. The Mishnah says if he says afal pichein, you can take it from him. Okay. So the funny thing though is that Rabbi that resisted the idea of pressuring the guy basically went ahead and applied subtle pressure to the guy. Okay, so I mean, it was his Rabbi that wasn't getting his loan paid back. Okay, so now the Gemara says like this. Okay, I'm a Rabbi Yehuda, I'm a Rav. Said Rabbi name of Rav Nachman. Excuse me, Rav Nachman. Neman am lower pruzbol hayabiyadi va'avad. Mimeni. A person can claim he had a pruzbol and he lost it. Okay, and he doesn't have to actually show a principle. So here's another cool about Prisbo. Before we saw that certain Talmidei Chachamim maybe didn't even have to write it, maybe could just verbally make a declaration, or there was a position in Shmuel that automatically there would be assumed a Prisbo. Rav Nachman is saying not that far, but he's saying that even if you don't have to produce it to prove that you've written it. Okay, my time of why even to the Kingdom Rabbanan Pruzbo, since it's a way they've established it and it's a way of addressing these debts, people would not have abandoned a permissible way of exacting debt and done it in transgression. So we assume that everybody took care of it. Now, obviously, sometimes people are negligent and they forget, but nevertheless, this is another nice big gaping loophole. Right? He doesn't say you're allowed to lie and say this, but anyway, once you don't have to produce it in court, it obviously basically is yet another way to make it very easy for people to collect their debts. He also coming to Rav. Now, when it came to Rav, a case like this, and the guy didn't produce a pruzbo, Amalei, so Rav said to him, "Midi pruzbo havelachav avad? Is it possible you had a pruzbo and you lost it?" So this is a case of open up your mouth to the mute, meaning which is funny because you imagine if a guy actually did write a pruzbo and he lost it, he would have said something. Like, oh my God, I had it, I can't find it, or whatever. But the guy said nothing. Right? It's after Shemitah, I'm sorry. And the guy said, "Oh, I don't know what to say." Well, maybe you had a pruzbo. So, oh yes, I did have a pruzbo and I lost it. So anyway, it does sound like there's a little wink and nod going on here.
Okay.
I
thought that means you're not supposed to do that. But
no, you're supposed to. You're supposed to. Okay.
Really?
Okay. Yes. Tanan, we talked. But wait a minute, we got a Mishnah that says that if the creditor takes out his the document and doesn't have a principal, he cannot collect. So it seems you need to produce the principal. Tanahi, it's a debate of Tanaim. Titania, Motzi Charkov Tzarshemo, principal, Chamim Aino Tzark. You don't have to actually produce the principal. Another obviously possible explanation is that at the earlier time of the Mishnah, as we've been seeing, principal was a more weighty and serious thing, even when it was created. And then later, it became a much more trivial and easier thing to use to satisfy the requirements of karka and the other types of requirements. So it's obviously even a more liberalizing of that option. Yes.
Is that like also a generalized principle?
Yeah, sometimes we do. We just assume that if somebody had just as easy of an option to do it in the way that we presume that they did it. Okay, but anyway, let's take a look at the next Mishnah. Evet, so now that was the sugya of Prismo, very fun sugya. Now we move on to a completely different sugya, which is interestingly, although we're obviously in the broad rubric here of Tikkun Olam, this Mishnah does not mention Tikkun Olam, and it's not even going to be clear from the Mishnah what case is the takana and what the Tikkun Olam is that is being achieved, and that'll be left for the Gemara to unpack. So let's take a look. Yes.
Did you say that after Shemitah it's automatically annulled?
Yes. On the last day of Shemitah, like the last minute of Shemitah. Rosh Hashanah of the 8th year, the debt no longer is annulled.
And Rosh said you're not supposed to demand it on Shemitah.
During Shemitah,
so
right.
When does this little interaction take place?
During Shemitah. According to the way the Rosh read it. Right. Okay. So a slave is taken captive and he was redeemed, right? They ransomed him back to the master. So, if he was redeemed for the sake of going back into servitude, slavery, yishtabed. So then he goes back to his master or whatever. He goes back into servitude. However, if he was redeemed, presumably not by his master, other people found out that a slave was being taken captive and taken away, by this foreign force, and they redeemed him, and they figured as well as they're redeeming him, they might as well set him free. It wasn't their slave, so presumably that would be the circumstances. Then he does not he does not get re-enslaved. He actually does go free. All that makes a lot of intuitive sense. But either way, he remains a slave. Okay, again, not clear exactly who's doing the Tikkun Olam and what the Tikkun Olam is that is being achieved, assuming that there is a Tikkun Olam, which would be the only explanation what it's doing in this parak. Let's take a look at the Gemara. What's the case? If the master has not given up hope of retrieving the slave, now you have to realize that even though we're obviously talking about a human being, the slave is legally considered to be property, right? So therefore, similar principles. Imagine that they hadn't taken my slave, but they had taken my, my car. Right, so the same the general principles about Yerush and Shina Rishus. Once I give up hope of retrieving it, it can be possessed by the person who took it, right, or by the third party that takes a hold of it. People know those general ideas, right, about Aveda and Geneva. You give up hope and somebody else gets it, it becomes their object. So that's That's so much. That is the basic ideas that is operating here. Okay, so if it's before the master has given up hope, right. So just because he's redeemed for the purpose of being a free man, again, it's not the master who's redeeming him for that purpose. So why does he go free? He's still totally my property. What right do you have? It's very nice that you bought my car off of this ganef, but it's still my car. Give me my car back. Maybe I have to pay you some money, right? Because you paid money to get it. But why do I lose ownership of it? All right, it's still mine. Okay, so it must be that I've given up hope. And since I've given up hope, that basically means I'm no longer master over it. We won't go to the exact details of Yesh and Shin Rishus, okay? And therefore, you are free to redeem that slave and to set him free and to make for the purpose of him being free. So if that's true, so, but if I've given up hope and he stops being mine and he stops being a slave, then why, when you redeem him to remain in servitude, does he remain in servitude? He should already be a free man. I've given up hope, and maybe that's enough to say. Okay, so we'll see. But that's the question. So Amar Abaye. So now we're going to have two answers to this. Amar Abaye, la'olam lifnei yesh. It's before yesh. L'shum eved, for the sake of a slave, I yishtabed l'Rabbi Rishon, obviously, because he's still mine, and I haven't given up hope. So, Lishum ben Chorin, now here's the question, though. So, I haven't given up hope, totally my property. Somebody redeems him as a free man. Why does he go free? Not for now. Then I can't enslave him, and the people that redeemed him can't enslave him. Obviously, the people that freed him can't enslave him. They redeemed him. They redeemed him to go free. So, any claim they might have had, obviously, they're not staking any claim to him. They redeemed him to be a free man. Now, why don't I get him back? It's my slave. I didn't give up hope. And very nice you redeemed him. I don't care what you had in mind. It's my slave. Give him back to me. So no, namilo, dilma minni velo parki, because we want to incentivize people to redeem the slave. Okay, it is true the slave, he's still property, but remember, he's owned by Jews, presumably well taken care of. He has obligations in mitzvot. He's taken by these marauding troops, right? He's going to be, presumably, he might be mistreated, right? They're violent, marauding troops, whatever they are. He's not going to have the opportunity to do mitzvot. We are not happy with this situation. Objectively, that's a bad thing, right? That the slave is now taken by these other, by this foreign power, whoever these people might be. So we want the slave to be not in that situation. Okay, so whether it means going back to the master, whether it means going free, we want him to not be in that situation. So we're going to incentivize people to redeem him. And we're going to tell all of those bleeding heart liberals out there that if you redeem this slave, you have an opportunity to set him free. Normally, he wouldn't be able to be set free because he was being held by his master. But now, if you redeem him for the sake of him going free, he will go free. And that will incentivize people to go ahead and to redeem him. Okay, I'm being a little facetious. But, maybe it's also just like that people will, the way sort of Rashi Board explains it is, if he's just a slave, I'll think, big deal, it's just a slave. But if I know that if I redeem him, he goes free, then I'm thinking about him as a potential free man. That'll make me more feel like, this is somebody important that's willing to redeem. Okay, so that's the less nice way of saying it.
I don't see that in the words, below pirke, and not to free him.
No, if he does not go free, right, if you say that he has to go back to the first master, people will hold back and not redeem him. And that's why he doesn't go back to the first master. Even though it's before Yehush, logically, he should go back to the first master.
Right.
But if he does, people will hold back and not redeem him.
So the language is mimane v'la pirke, to prevent him
not prevent. People will hold back on their own and won't redeem him if you tell him to go back to the first master. So to prevent people from not redeeming him, to incentivize, we're going to say that if you redeem him, he'll go free.
I don't think people are that noble. I think it's the opposite. In other words, if I don't get anything out of it, why redeem him? But if I can get him as a slave and list the market value.
No, but people have, right, but there's a sense of a mitzvah. There's a mitzvah to be, podesh shvuyim. So I think, yeah, there's a mitzvah to be podesh shvuyim, but well, let's all be, it's like really if they're only free Jews, like, we sort of put slaves in the second class status. Oh, you tell me he'll be a free Jew, then I sort of see this as my obligation of pidyon shvuyim. That's sort of how it gets worked out. Okay, so that's the idea. So according to that, the tikkun olam is that he goes free when he's redeemed to go free, even though there's no yesh. He's totally his master's property, but we're going to incentivize people to redeem him, and for the sake of him going free, that'll help you. Or if they do it for that reason, he'll go free, and that'll be the tikkun olam. That's the position of the chachamim. Comes Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer ben kach uben kach yishaved. No, I'm sorry, I don't buy any of that stuff. He's still totally owned by the master. There's just as much of a mitzvah to be podesh shvuyim if they're free and if they're slaves, and therefore it's. I don't think you have to incentivize people. Okay, so that's the question of, that's one way of framing the tikkun olam. The tikkun olam is that he goes free if that's why they were freeing, if that's why they were redeeming him, even though he shouldn't. It was before Yehush, but that'll help get people to redeem him. That's one approach. Okay, that's, who was that? That was, who said that approach? Abaye. Okay. Rav Omar, now Rav has, obviously he's going to take the other tack. No, Rav says, we're dealing after Yehush. If it's before Yehush, you're right. Totally my property. I wasn't miyayish. I don't care what you had in mind. Give him back to me. Maybe I have to pay you for your expenses. We'll figure that out. But give him back to me. That's before Yehush. La'achar Yehush, that's when we're talking about. Now, if you redeemed him for a slave, la'achar Yehush, you know why he's still a slave, even though it's la'achar Yehush? You get to enslave him. If you redeemed him because you wanted to take him as your slave, it's like a Yehush and a Shinu Rishus. Even though I was miyayish and I lost my claim to him, he was not yet a free man. You redeemed him from the captors, so you take possession of him. That's if it's l'shem eved. Now, l'shum ben chorin, if it's to be free, lo yishabed, lo l'rabbi rishon, lo l'rabbi sheni. Then obviously he's free and he can't be enslaved by either. L'rabbi sheni lo, l'shum ben chorin parke. To the second master, because you're not trying to enslave him. And l'rabbi rishon lami lo, the halacha Yehush, it's after Yehush. That's a very nice explanation. That has the chachamim saying the ikar hadin. The chachamim aren't saying the tikkun olam; they're saying the ikar hadin. It's after Yehush, so he can be taken by a second person. But if the second person doesn't take him, doesn't want to possess him, then he's released by the person holding him. Nobody's staking a claim to him, so he goes free. He's not owned by anyone, and he goes free. Okay, so that's the chachamim are saying it's la'achar Yehush, and what they're saying is mi'ikar hadin. That he's either taken possession by the second person, or he's freed based on the second person's intention. Okay, that's Rabbi. So what's Rabbi Shimon Gamliel? And Rabbi Shimon Gamliel was making the tikkun olam, and it's a different type of a tikkun olam. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel omer ben kach uben kach yishtabed. Either way, he's enslaved. Now, why? It was miyayish. Nobody's trying to take possession of him.
Can you assume the guy was miyayish? Like, how do you know?
Well, okay, that would be a separate question. How do you determine that? But that's not our issue right now. Okay, the Amar Chizkiah, because Chizkiah said, why do they say either? Why did Rabbi Gamliel say either way he's enslaved? Because if a slave knows that if I go ahead and get taken by captors at the way to get out of, to get away, run away from my master, I'll get redeemed and I'll go free. Well, maybe, but anyway, they felt like they had to deal with the concern of runaway slaves, so therefore they made a special takana that the slaves go back to their masters, even if logically they should be free because there was Yehush and the second one did not want. Now, which master does he go back to? It's not totally clear. Rashi says, where's Rashi? A minute. Rashi says l'rabbi rishon. He clarifies, which makes sense because the idea is if you want to disincentivize slaves to run away, you want to let them know whatever they try, they're going to go back to their master. Not whatever, because if the second one wanted to take possession of him, presumably the second one would take possession of him. But even if either maybe they'll be taken possession by the second one. But if the second one is doing it for the sake of, when Rashi says Rashi might be understanding that even if the second one redeems him for the purpose of enslaving him to himself, we are making a takana that he's always going back to the Rabbi Rishon, right? So, I mean, look, it's very difficult to read these. Like, these are like, you think about these runaway slave laws in the South and all of this. This is what's happening. Okay, but it also makes you appreciate the issue about tikkun olam. Tikkun olam is not always these nice sort of liberal ideas, that we think about that sometimes people assume with tikkun olam. The tikkun olam is we got a world in which slaves are an important commodity, important part of the economy, and we can't have them running away. So the tikkun olam is that even in situations where they should be able to be going free, or at least going to a different master who might be a better master, right? And maybe we want to incentivize them to run away if they're being so oppressed. No. Our tikkun olam is they're always going to get returned to their first master. We can't have slaves running away, right? So it's a very different way of looking at it, okay? So one way is the tikkun olam is that they go free when they're redeemed to go free, and it's before Yeush, and that's to incentivize people to redeem them. And the other tikkun olam, it's la'achar Yeush, and they really should either go free or go to the second master, but the tikkun olam is they always go back to their first master. All right? Everybody got that? Those sort of two scenarios? Yeah.
Does Torah mention about a runaway slave does not get returned? Is that only a Hebrew slave?
That's also understood in the context of running from Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Yisrael, and it's so it's a good question, but it's and I think we're actually going to get to it later in the Gemara, but it's not directly applicable. It's a very good question. Okay, so the Gemara says like this. Okay. So Meisei, I'll ask on this. I'm a lemmer of Shimon Gamliel. So here we have a brighter. Shimon Gamliel said to the Chachamim, "The shem shemitzah liftosas b'nei chorin, kach mitzvah liftosas havadim." It's the same way it's a mitzvah to redeem slaves, it's a mitzvah to redeem free people, it's a mitzvah to redeem slaves. So why is he saying that? That's more perfectly according to Abaye, because Abaye says that that's why the Chachamim said he goes free to incentivize people, and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said, no, you don't need to incentivize them. It's the same mitzvah. So B'iklim L'Abaye, the Amar Lifnei Yeush is before Yeush. So Hainu the Kama Kishem. So that's why the Tanakam is saying we got to let him go free because that'll incentivize people. And Rabbi Gamliel is saying you don't have to let him go free. They don't need to be incentivized. Okay. Ella L'Rava Damar L'Achar Yeush, but Rava says it's L'Achar Yeush. And the Chachamim are just saying the normal halacha. And Rabbi Shimon Gamliel is coming and creating this takana to make all the slaves go back. So Hai Kashem. What do you mean? He's saying, oh, look, there's a same mitzvah to redeem them. That's like irrelevant to the discussion. Mishum de Chizkiyahu. He should be saying, what about Chizkiyahu? What about making sure that slaves don't run away? So Amalach Rava will say that there's a pretty darn good proof that at least this Breita interprets it like Abaye. So Amalach Rava will say back to him, okay, this is a nice way out of it. He didn't know what the rabbis were saying. The rabbi said, in this case, slave, in this case, go free. He says, I don't know what you're talking about. He says, if you're saying before Yeush, and then you're coming up with this weird idea that they go free to incentivize people, you're wrong. So, Hainu Kashem, you're wrong. You don't need to incentivize people before Yeush. And if it's La'achar Yeush, and what you're saying is that it makes sense that he goes free, if that's how he was redeemed, then Chizkiah, I also say you're wrong, because of Chizkiah, that we should actually make a takana to make sure that all slaves go back to their masters. Okay. Now the Gemara says like this. Rav says, it's after Yeush, and according to the Chachamim who don't have a takana, if he's redeemed to be enslaved by the second master, he is enslaved by the second master. It's like a Yeush and a Shina Rishus. So the Gemara says, Sheni Miman Kanile. Who did the Sheni buy him from? Okay, meaning now the captors. But the question is that the point that the Gemara is sort of assuming, if the captors have no rights to the slave, I mean, there's a whole discussion in the Rishonim how to exactly conceptualize this, but the idea is like this. If the captors have no right to the slave, then after I'm miyayish from the slave, he basically at that moment is ownerless. Why didn't he go free at that moment?
If I steal your object, you're miyayish, I'm the ganav is koneh, isn't it?
So in general, we say that by normal cases of a normal ganav, there's something called kinyane gneva or kinyane gzeva. That he has some type of ownership over that, not full ownership, but some type of an ownership over that. Now, that's the most question that is asking here. Where do we have this idea that these non-Jewish captors can get ownership, a partial ownership over the slave? And the presumption is that if they didn't have that, then if there was Yeush, and the owner was Miyayish, the captors have no rights on the slave, so that itself would make him a free man. So the idea that he still remains a slave and he can be transferred to the hands of another master presumes that the captors have some control and some ownership over him. So the Gemara says, where do we know that from? Okay,
how did he become a slave in the first place? For example, just one example.
One example, he was bought, he was enslaved, he was taken captive, like people became slaves. The non-Jews were at war. They, the victorious troops enslaved the other thing, and then sold them, and the Jew bought them. Yeah, that would be an example.
That's called the slave
and
market.
we're actually gonna see some of that right now. Okay, so let's take a look. So this is like this. Okay, so Shavai Gufe Mikanile. How did the captor get any ownership over the slave? So the Gemara says, what? From the captor. Shavai Gufe Mikanile. Yes. Kanile Lamasa Yadav. He doesn't own him fully as property, but he at least has rights to his labor. Okay, now by the way, I do want to say that this is similar to an idea. It partly has to do with the nature of owning human beings as property, and obviously, and to what degree can they be owned as property or just owned for their labor? Slaves that are non-Jews are owned as property. But the other issue is about how you understand Kinyane Gnev and Kinyane Gzela. If I go and I steal Michael's car, right? We just said that there's something called Kinyane Gnev. Now, what does it mean I own it? I don't own it. I mean, I would have to give it back to him if he finds me. But what it means is, here's actually one application of that halacha. Well, it could mean I'm responsible, but ownership normally also suggests rights, not just responsibilities. And one application of this is that if Michael finds me and I give him a bit back, I don't have to pay him any rental fees. Okay, which is a funny idea. Here I stole it from him, but nevertheless, the fact that it was in my possession and I was in control and I was trying to take possession of it gave me some de facto rights of usage. It's a bizarre idea, but that's the idea of Kinyane Gnev.
Okay, Kishat Gzela, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes, and I pay it back, and I don't pay any usage fees. So here, that's exactly being paralleled here. The captors own him, not fully as property, but they own him that they're entitled to his labor. But because they have that type of a partial ownership over him, a de facto and partial ownership, he does not go free even after Yeush, and he transfers into the hands of the third party who frees him to enslave him.
So that's where Kinyane Guf.
All right, yeah. Anyway, well, let's not go there. So Gemara says, what?
To a husband and wife that work with their hands.
That's exactly what Michael said. Yeah, there are parallels to that. Oh, no, it wasn't exactly what Michael said. Anyway, yes, there are parallels. The whole idea of Masa Yodav. Let's read another line. John, you had a question? Okay, let's read another line. It says like this. Okay, L'Masa Yodav. Now here, I explained it because it was a perfect parallel to like a Gneva Gzela situation. But now what Reish Lakish is doing, or the Gemara is doing by quoting Reish Lakish, is it's putting it in the larger context of general idea of enslaving human beings, okay? And here is a strange idea, which is that Jews can own non-Jews as slaves as property, but non-Jews can only own non-Jews as slaves as indentured servants. They own them for their Maseh Yadayim, but not fully as property. Very strange and deeply disturbing idea. Okay. How do you know a non-Jew can own a non-Jew if he is trying to enslave him for his labor, but not fully as property, but he does own him for his labor? The verse says, so there you go, Dov. That's your pasuk. From those that dwell among you, you can buy from them slaves. That's a pasuk. Buy slaves from the non-Jews dwelling among you. Okay. So the drush is the following: Mehem tiknu, atem koni mehem. You buy from them slaves, and they become fully slaves. They become property. Okay, your property. The lohem koni michem, but they cannot buy slaves from you. You can't sell yourself as a slave to non-Jew. Now you can, as we're going to see, because Michael correctly remembers, in those psukim it talks about a Jew selling himself as a slave to the non-Jews. But the point is, not as property for Maseh Yadayim. Okay, so you can. So I'm going to sort of anticipate already the end of the Gemara just to clarify this. You can buy them as property. They cannot buy you as property. They can buy you as slaves for your Maseh Yadayim, but not. But right, the lohein konim zeh mizeh, and they can't buy each other as property. So here's the irony: they go ahead and they, attack another nation, enslave the people. They only own them for their Maseh Yadayim. Then they go ahead and they sell them to the Jews, and now the Jews own them as property. Okay, so they can't own you as property. They can't own each other as property. The only people that can be owned as property, this is so deeply disturbing, I can't even say it. Right. The way a slave can be owned as property is a Jew owning a non-Jew.
Unless you assume,
a Jew,
unless they assume the following social reality, that it's a tikkun by Jewish law not to allow a pagan to own a human being as property because it'll be too abusive. So there has to be some, whereas it's better.
Okay, that makes it better.
Better for a pagan to be owned as property by a Jew than for a pagan to be free and on his own.
I don't know about free and on his own. That's a different conversation. But the idea, certainly, if you think about Shibud Mitzrayim, that but it's still,
It's
we can't trust the non-Jews and the pagans, right, to own each other as property. The only people that can be trusted to own slaves as property is the people who themselves were enslaved and owned as property.
They'll use it.
Right. Okay. Anyway, that's the point. The only people that can be owned as property is you can own them as property. Okay. Then the Breita goes on. Okay. Yachal. Let's go back talking about Proust Ball. Now the Breita continues. Maybe they can't own one another. So the Gemara interrupts the Breita before it finishes its sentence, like some of you do here with me. So what do you mean? Hamarta Elohim konim zeh mizeh. What do you mean? Maybe they can't own one another? You said they can't own one another. No, this is what the Breita says. The Elohim konim zeh mizeh lugufa. They can't own one another as fully as property. But maybe they shouldn't be even able to own one another, even for their ma'aseh yadayim, even for their labor of their hands. Amarta, of course, if that was true, how could you ever buy slaves from them if they couldn't have any ownership? Anyway, Amarta kavachomer. Now that's a kavachomer. Ovi kocham Yisrael kona. A non-Jew can own a Jew for his labor, right? That's a psukim in the Torah that you sell yourself to a Jew. You're taking, if you have those cases where you have to, although in the context of Shemitah where you have to raise money and whatever, you sell yourself as a slave. So they can own Jews as for their Maseh Yadayim. And certainly they can own one another for Maseh Yadayim. So they own one another for Maseh Yadayim. They own you for Maseh Yadayim. You actually can own them legufo. Okay, and that explains the Shavai captors the slave. He owns the slave Lamasi Atayim, and then he's bought by another Jew, and the other Jew now is able to take possession of him Legufo. Right? You got the idea? Right? The actual full ownership of property, right? The slave doesn't go free because the non-Jew is still sort of controlling and has a degree of ownership, which prevents the slave from being freed, even though I've given up hope of getting him back. And then the other Jew is now able to take possession of him legufo, because the Jew can own him legufo. Okay, so that's how that works when he redeems him in order to enslave.
It actually makes an important difference. So what to do,
Right. So Rashi discusses, all right, so if you want to look at the Rashi, let's look at that. I mean, I was focusing on it purely and economically, but it is important. You're right. So let's look at Rashi. So what's the implication about legufo? Get, right? One issue is, how does a person stop being a slave? If you own them as property, you need actually a writ of manumission. You need a get that changes their status. If you only own them lima aseyadayim, then you can more just like renounce your ownership, right? It's sort of like I could be like, I don't know, mafkir my property. I release. I no longer make any claim to it. So whereas if it's really about full ownership of identity and as person as property, you need to change their status and you need a get. That's one issue. Or that's also related to the issue about personal status, right? That is, if he's being owned by a non-Jew, he can become Jewish, right? So, the idea that his full personal status and identity is defined, by him being a slave, that's only when he's owned legufo. So there's two aspects of being owned legufo, right? One is a purely dine mamnis aspect. Like a simple example is, I put something on your slave, you own it because it's on your property. Like, it's just a simple fact. He's a piece of property, right? That's one relevant aspect of being owned legufo. As opposed to if you own his labor, you don't actually own his body, that halacha wouldn't apply. But Rashi correctly, and thank you, Michael, for pointing it out, points to the idea that owning a person as property goes more than just a technical question of how much you own. If he's owned as property, it's a status issue. His whole status and identity is a slave. And if his status and identity is a slave, not just that you have rights to his labor, then that means that, right, to change that status, you need a get shichrur, you need a writ of manumission. It's also like the way you need a get for a woman. It's about changing status. The person can't make a choice. I'm going to become Jewish. I'm going to whatever, right? His whole status is defined, by that sense of ownership. So that's a very important to point out that that's part of what owning legufo means.
So the last one. Then be usher Vat Yisrael, right? Because if he does,
if he's Megayer, he's mutter Vat Yisrael.
If he's what?
If he's taken by a non-Jew, okay, and then he's Megayer. So a non-Jew owns another non-Jew Lamasi Yadayim. Right. That non-Jew who's a slave can be Megayer because his identity isn't defined by him being a slave, and now he's Jewish, and now he's just Jewish, and somebody else owns his Masi Yadayim. He's like an Eved or whatever. He can still go ahead and marry by Israel. He's fully Jewish, but he's owned legufo. His whole identity is defined by saying he doesn't get to redefine his status. He doesn't get to be Megayer.
Which runs away.
Well, that's not going to run away. He doesn't get to choose to be Megayer. Okay, his whole status is defined by him being a slave. If I, as the master, want to free him, that's a different story.
How do
Okay.
you, I don't understand how to read this Kal V'chomer. How do you read Kal V'chomer?
If a non-Jew can own a Jew for Masei
How do you
Adayim,
read that in the words? Oved Yisrael.
what do you mean?
I'm sorry.
Kavachomer, Ovi Kochavim Yisrael Kona. If an Ovi Kochavim owns a Jew for Masei Adayim, Ovi Kochavim lo kol.
I
And
got
certainly
you.
they can own a
Okay.
non-Jew.
Okay.
Okay.
I want to put the corner for you.
All right.
Yeah.
Ema Hani Mili Bekaspa. Now, 1 minute. Maybe this only is through money. A non-Jew owns a Jew. How does a non-Jew take possession of a Jew for Masei Adayim? When the Jew sells himself to the non-Jew. Okay, but or as Rashi says, in general, how would a non-Jew take possession of land? Think of slaves as land through money, and we learned that out from Psukim. Okay, so the whole idea that they can take possession of Masei Adayim, we have the paradigms of a Jew selling himself as a slave to a non-Jew, or a non-Jew taking possession of land. The paradigms are through purchase. Okay, but in this case, it's not through. There's no purchase. He's stolen. He took him captive, and that's taking direct physical possession of him. Okay, that's a type of an idea of chazaka. Normally, chazaka is I'm willingly selling you my land, and you do some act to demonstrate mastery over it, and you take possession of it. You go and you build a fence, or you dig a hole. This is a forceful chazaka. Okay, this is Tosfos calls this kibush milchama. Okay, this is basically like might makes right. Okay, that I go ahead and I just seize property in war. I seize your slave and I take it captive. That idea of that fact that he's fully under my control and I've seized him gives me some rights to him. Where do we get that idea? Okay, because that's what happened. These non-Jewish captors stole my slave, and now we're saying they own him l'masei adayim. Where do we know that idea exists? Okay, b'chazaka minayin. How do you know that works with chazaka? Maybe it doesn't work b'chazaka. I'm Rav Papa. So Rav Papa says, I'm on a mo of tiro b'sichon. No, we know it from another case of Cheskas, what do you call it? Of Kibush, Kibush Mochama, which is the case about Ammon and Moab, right? Sichon took over the lands of Ammon and Moab. Bnei Israel took over the lands of Sichon, right? Everybody remember those stories in, whatever. But in Shoftim, right? And also starting in Midbar or whatever. Anyway, but we weren't allowed to seize lands of Ammon and Moab, right? The Torah says the Atatzer Moab, etc. We were allowed to because they stopped being lands of Ammon and Moab. They became lands of Sichon because he captured them. He captured them in war. Okay, that nation captured them in war. So you see, there's an idea of kibush milchama. When something is captured by force and captured in war, that makes it belong to that next nation. Okay, so don't read any of now. People are going to talk about the most political and contentious stuff ever that we've ever had here. Okay, by this contemporary situations. Anyway, so that belongs to that nation. So similarly, if that could be true about the land, presumably it's true about the people that were captured, and therefore there is this idea of kibush milchama, something taken by force actually gives them rights to that thing. Okay, so so the Gemara says like this. That's when they took land from when non-Jews took land from non-Jews, that they have an idea of taking possession by force. How about if they take for forceful possession of something that's owned by Jews? How do you know that gives them rights to it? So the verse says, "Vayish mimenu shevi," and they took a captive. And the fact that it's called a shevi, it doesn't say that they took a person captive, but they took a captive means that person became a captive. Okay, and that changed that person's identity. All right, so now we've established
that when they can't like capture a free man and enslave him, a free Jew.
Yes, they can, but l'masei adayim, not legufa.
Yeah, no.
Okay, so non-Jews can again own one another l'masei adayim, own Jews l'masei adayim. The only person that's owned legufa is a Jew owning a non-Jew. Again, disturbing how we explain it anyway. But in this case, the non-Jews took my slave captive. They still own him l'masei adayim, even though it was a forceful seizing. They own him l'masei adayim, and therefore he doesn't go free, even though I'm miyayish, and he's able to be transferred to the possession of another Jew who wants to buy him and enslave him. All right. So now the Gemara says like this. How about if he actually he escaped from his captors? Okay, so if an Eved escaped, it says here from like a prison, but it's understood in this context, he escaped from his captors, he goes free. Because he won't get shichur. And not only does he go free, we would force his master to write a writ of manumission to make sure that his freedom was clear and unquestionable. Well, maybe. Anyway, okay, but let's just read the Gemara. The Gemara is totally ignoring that pasuk. We'll get to that pasuk later. Okay, so the Gemara says it's none. Now let's see if this fits. Either way, he's enslaved. Whenever Rabbi Shimon Gamliel appears in our Mishnah, we rule like him. Except these three cases, which I'm not even going to bother to explain. Now, we rule like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, says Rabbi Yochanan, which means he's enslaved. But there's another teaching of Rabbi Yochanan, which is that if he escapes his captors, he goes free. So which is it? Is he enslaved? Because according to this, he should always be enslaved once he's taken captive.
This is an Eved escaping from a Jewish master.
No, an Eved that was taken captive, like in our Mishnah, but then escaped his captors.
So then why does he need get shichur if it's only the Masay Yadav?
Because, that's a good question. It might depend before or after Yeush, okay? But let's anyway see let's first figure out the Gemara, okay? So it says like this. So the Gemara wants to know, Rabbi Gamliel says Rabbi Yochanan says we rule like Rabbi Gamliel, he's always enslaved. And here Rabbi Yochanan is saying that when he escapes his captors, he goes free. So the Gemara says like
escaping.
All right, so that's what the Gemara says. Everybody's got their theory. Rabbi says the Gemara. It's good according to Rabbi. I'm glad that you're so involved. So according to Rabbi, he makes sense of this. When does Rabbi Gamliel say he's enslaved, and when do we rule like that? Before Yeush. Right before Yeush, so he totally remains enslaved. End of story, and that's the case in the Mishnah. The Halacha Yeush. When it says that he escapes his captors, he goes free. That's after Yeush. Now Dov says, so why does the master have to write to get shichur? Okay, so that's a separate question. Which is, let's say, forget that I was miyai. Let's say I said explicitly, I am mafkir my Eved. I renounce any ownership over my slave. Does he need to get shichur or not? So we're going to see in a few minutes, hopefully, or if not, whenever, soon, that he still might need, according to many opinions, to get shichur, because that gets to the difference between owning him as property and personal status. It might be that if I'm miyayish or I'm mafkir him, I no longer own him as property. I can't demand his labor, nothing. But his identity is still that of a slave. His personal status is still that of a slave. And to change the status issue, I still might need to start shichur.
Okay, you just said that Oed Kochavim cannot own.
It's true. He doesn't own him. I'm miyayish from him. He's not. He cannot be enslaved. I cannot demand any work from him.
His status?
But he's still not fully chayiv in mitzvahs. He can't marry a Jewish woman because it's a personal status issue. Is not necessarily changed by a dini mamanis fact.
Okay.
A personal status issue might need a star to change his identity.
This is halacha requiring an Oved Kochavim to write a get shichur.
No, it requires his original master. He's my slave. He was taken captive. He escaped his captors. He goes, so once he escaped his captors, he goes free, and I now am compelled to write him a shtar sheker, Rabbi Risha. Okay. That was what was in the okay. Exactly. Anyway, but we will see about that issue, about ownership and identity and status. Again, going back to that Rashi we read before. Okay. So that according to Rabbi, it makes sense. We will at he remains a slave before Yeush, but when he escapes after Yeush, so it's after Yeush. Nobody owns him. He goes free, and I write a shtar shichur to address the status issues. That's very nice. But that even after Yeush, we make this takana that everybody goes back to their master because we don't want slaves running away. So we're always going to send slaves back to their master. And according to Rabbi Yochanan, we rule that way. So what's the slave doing going free? So it's a contradiction. So Rava will say to you, one minute. Why do we make slaves go back after Yeush if nobody's enslaving them? Because of Chizkiah, because we don't want slaves to escape. I mean, to run away from their masters. But Reach Shani, we would not apply that when he actually is escaped from his captors, as opposed to have been redeemed. Why? What difference does it make? But Reach Shani. If he's willing to risk his life to run away, he obviously, because presumably the penalty would be death if you ran away from your captors. So if he's willing to risk his life to run away, he's certainly not intentionally putting himself in that situation. Right? Do you remember the reason for Chizkiah, why we send slaves back to their masters? So they don't intentionally let themselves be taken captive. Everybody with me? You remember that? Right? We know. So in order so they don't say, I'll let myself get taken captive. It'll only improve my lot or whatever. We say, no. If you're taken captive, you're going back to your master. Okay, but this guy's demonstrated that he's willing to risk his life to not be a captive, because if he's found escaping, he'd be put to death. So in that case, maybe we have Rahmanas on him, but we certainly don't need this takana in such a case when somebody is really willing to risk their life. Okay, clearly they did not intentionally put themselves in that situation. All right, so now the Gemara says like this. Okay. I'm saying about Shmuel, the maidservant of Shmuel, Ishtavai was taken captive. Parkua, some people redeemed her. Lishum Amhasa, to remain a servant for Shmuel. They figured they'd do him a favor, so they redeemed. Okay, for Shadruale, and they sent her back to him. Shalchule, and they sent him a message. That he, once redeemed, the slave always goes back to the master. You, Shmuel, you might want to be a big tzaddik and not take her back. Even if you're like the rabbis that say when she's redeemed to be free, she goes free. Don't worry about it. We redeemed her to remain your slave, so keep her. Okay, our gift. Okay, so we did it for you. Now here's the only problem. They assumed that the case was before Yesh, but that wasn't actually the situation. Shmuel actually had already been miyayish from her. Okay, the Shmuel, and if he'd been miyayish, maybe the whole debate of Rishon Gamliel and the Chachamim was lifnei Yesh, right? La'achar Yesh. Now, okay, it might have been la'achar Yesh, but they were still doing it like l'shum eved or something. All right, so why still? So let's take a look, but not for themselves as a slave. And Shmuel had no interest in taking her as a slave. So Shmuel, it wasn't enough that he didn't enslave her. But not only that, she said she's a total free person, even without a writ of manumission. And here gets to the question of, once you lose your monetary ownership, does the slave automatically become a free person, or do they need a writ to change their personal status? And Shmuel says that the two are intimately intertwined. And if you don't own them in a monetary way, then they don't need anything else. They're completely a free person. Okay. The Amar Shmuel, Shmuel goes into reason. The Amar Shmuel says, if you renounce ownership of your slave, he goes free, and he does not even need a writ to change his personal manumission status, which means not only can you not enslave him, but he's fully chayav in mitzvos, can marry a Jewish, a Jewish spouse or whatever, full halachic status as a free person. His halachic status changes with his monetary status. Shenemar, as the verse says, the slave of a man. So Eved Ish, I don't get it. So it can't be a slave of a woman. What does it mean, slave of a man? Ella, if he's really enslaved, then he has the status of a slave. Once the master does not have any rights over him, monetary rights, in Kari Eved, his personal status changes as well. So this was a case of La'achar Yeush. Shmuel wasn't going to repossess her. They didn't want to possess her, so she went free. It was like Hefker, and therefore didn't even need a writ of manumission. Okay, let's just read one more story quickly. I'm saying to Rabbi Abba Bar Zutra, the maidservant of Rabbi Abba, Ishtavai, was taken captive. Parka Hahu Tarmuda, a certain Tarmudai, a certain non-Jew, redeemed her. Lishum Itita, and he wanted to take her as a wife. So Shalchule, so some Jews sent to Rabbi Abba, and they said, and they didn't want this non-Jew to take her as a wife. So they said like this: Shalchule lidite, Iyeus Avdis Shadar Lagita de Cherusa. So if you want to, so they said, look, do the right thing and and give your slave a shtar shichra. Now that she's in the hand of this non-Jew who wants to marry her, give her shtar shichra. So like, what? What's that going to do? So the Gemara says, hey Chidami, what's the case? If these people are trying to help out and redeem her, why do they need him to send her shtar shichra, redeem her, and send her back to the master? If they can't get enough money to redeem her, what's it going to help to send her shtar shichra? She's being held by the non-Jew. So I don't understand. What's a shtar shichra going to do? She's being held by a non-Jew. So the Gemara says no. The matzu parkale. They have the money to redeem her. Okay, or theoretically, but they need to raise it. But again, it's similar to the issues before about people are more incentivized to redeem somebody if they're free. So they said to him, look, free your slave in the hands of the non-Jew, then people will know that if they redeem her, she'll go free. She'll be a free person. Then they'll feel, a free person is being held captive. They'll be more incentivized to redeem her. Okay? Then people will gather together, will be able to raise the money. The eBay same, and if you want, I could say Olam Daloma to Barclay. They didn't have the wherewithal to redeem her. But the Kivan the Meshadula Gittin the Cherusa, what if you send her this Shtar Shichur Mitzvah Ba'ape, then it'll be public that she was a slave. This non-Jew doesn't want people to know that she was a slave. Okay, so it'll be public that she's a slave. He'll no longer feel embarrassed to be having her as his wife, and therefore he'll lower the price. And it'll be easier for us to redeem her. Right now, we can't afford it. But if you make it public that she's a slave and you send the Shtar Shichrur, he'll come down with the price and we'll be able to redeem her. No. But didn't the master teach? But the non-Jews, they'll even take our, they'll even take our animals. So why would he be embarrassed that she's a slave of a non-Jew? That won't embarrass him to take her as a wife. So the Gemara says, no. Honey, Mili Bitsina. That's if nobody finds out about it. They're happy to do that. But for Hesia to be publicly known as his wife, Zilabu Milsa, that's embarrassing. So therefore, once it's known she's a slave, he'll come down on the price, and therefore she was a slave, and we'll be able to redeem her. Okay, I do not know how we're going to